In a previous video, we went over translating comparisons. So if you're given a word problem where you're comparing two quantities, we went over how to translate that word problem or that comparison into algebra. So just as a recap, anytime you have a word problem where you see the words more or less than, or as many, as much as, or greater, fewer than, you have a comparison, and what you want to do is you want to assign variables. So the steps are you want to assign variables to the quantities being compared, and then you want to define the first variable, meaning the quantity that is mentioned first, in terms of the second. So the quantity mentioned first is by itself, and the quantity mentioned second is what you add or subtract or multiply or divide. So in this video, what I'd like to do is go over maybe a bit more of a visual explanation as to why you do this, so that it might be a little bit more intuitive. These steps might be a little bit more intuitive, so you're not just memorizing these steps, but you understand why you're doing this. So let's take a look at these statements one more time. Let's take a look at the first one. We're told that there are 25 more bananas than apples. So this is a comparison. It's more than are the key words. One thing to ask yourself is to ask yourself, well, we're comparing bananas and apples, so the first step should be obvious. You want to put variables for the things you're comparing, so B and A. I'll write them in just a second, as you'll see why. Um, but ask yourself, do we have more bananas or apples? Well, there's 25 more bananas, so the amount of bananas is larger. I'm going to visualize that. I'm going to write that so that it's obvious visually. So let's say B is the number of bananas. I'm going to write that as a big variable, and A is the number of apples. I'll write that as a small variable. So visually, you see that there's more bananas than apples. If I were to make an equation, I couldn't just leave it as B equals A because these are not equal. There's more bananas. The equation equalizes these two quantities. Or if we make an equation, we're saying that these two quantities are somehow the same. So what I have to do is I have to balance this out, or make these two quantities the same, and I would do that by adding 25. Well, to which side? I'm not going to add it to the left side because that side is already bigger, so I'm going to add it to the right side. By adding 25 to the number of apples, what I've done is equalized the quantities. There used to be more bananas than apples, but if I add 25 to the number of apples, now I have the same quantity. Or rather, these two quantities are the same. The number of bananas is the same as the number of apples plus 25. So this, as you see, by doing this, we get that equation that we got in the previous video, which is that B equals A plus 25. We add to the quantity mentioned second, and the quantity mentioned first, B, bananas, is by itself. We're defining this first quantity in terms of the second. So one way to think about it again, the way we did it this time, is by thinking about the two quantities, which one is bigger or smaller, visualizing that with bigger and smaller variables, and then balancing them out by adding or subtracting the relevant quantity. So for example, a shop currently has 90 fewer vegan cupcakes than non-vegan cupcakes. So we're comparing vegan cupcakes to non-vegan cupcakes. Let's say V is the number of vegan cupcakes and N is the number of non-vegan cupcakes. Which quantity is bigger? Do we have more vegan cupcakes or more non-vegan cupcakes? Well, we have 90 fewer vegan cupcakes, so the number of vegan cupcakes is smaller. That quantity is smaller. So we'll put a small v and a large N, because the number of vegan cupcakes is 90 fewer than non-vegan cupcakes. There's fewer vegan cupcakes. To balance these out, or to equalize these, because right now they're not the same, we have to subtract 90 from the number of non-vegan cupcakes. And so we get the same equation we got in the previous video, which is that V equals N minus 90. Notice we could have actually done the same thing, or gotten the same relationship between these two quantities by adding 90 to the V, which is algebraically the same as adding 90 to this side and to this side and then canceling it out. But just because this is 90 fewer means you subtract 90, and by seeing that the N is bigger, in order to equalize these, we're going to subtract from the N. So let's try this statement. Let's translate this one. Lauren contributed 4 times as many poems to the school magazine as did James. We're comparing the number of poems Lauren contributed to the number of poems James did. Lauren contributed 4 times many, so she contributed more poems, which means that if we were to write this, if we were to visualize this, L being the number of poems that Lauren contributed and J being the number of poems James did, because Lauren contributed more, we'll make that bigger. In order to equalize these, we have to increase the number of poems that James contributed, or we have to multiply that by 4. And so once again, we get the same equation that we got in the previous video where L equals 4J. What we're doing is we're visualizing um, which quantity is bigger or smaller, and then adjusting the other quantity as necessary. And it turns out that the first quantity mentioned is the one that's that's by itself, because we're defining the first quantity mentioned, in this case Lauren or vegan cupcakes or bananas, in terms of the other one. So one more time, the price of a laptop is $200 more than twice the price of a tablet. We're comparing the price of a laptop, and this one's a little bit trickier. We're not comparing it to the price of a tablet, but twice the price of a tablet. So the price of a laptop is actually more expensive than twice the price of a tablet. So again, we'll make this a big L. Twice the price of a tablet is 2T. We'll make that a little bit smaller because the price of the laptop is more than twice the price of the tablet. It's $200 more, so to equalize these, we'll add $200 over here, and now they're the same. And so we get the same equation as in the previous video, which is that L is equal to 2T plus 200. So hopefully this makes it a little bit more intuitive as to why we follow these two steps when we're translating comparisons.